monitor them so they can say if the baby is above the islet, which is 0, and if the baby is below. So it's important to know about the pelvis and what numbers you're in, because that tells them that you're descending very well and it's going to be a smooth labor. But if you get stuck at one level more than the other one, that becomes a problem, and we don't want the baby to get stuck, because the thing about labor is it's what's called positive feedback as opposed to negative feedback. What positive feedback means is you have hormones that will propitiate an action, and they will keep adding to each other to another. The impulses will keep going until the outcome, the result they want happens. And until that happens, they won't stop, which is the opposite of negative feedback, which is, for example, let's say your blood pressure or diabetes, right? Which is negative feedback, because they can reverse themselves, right? Another signal can reverse it and cause it to stop. And then the person doesn't die, right? But with positive feedback, which is what labor is, that individual will die because labor will not stop until baby is out. So baby needs to be expelled. So the contractions will continue to increase. Everything that happens during labor will just intensify. The power, the intensity, everything is worse. So if that baby gets stuck, there's no going back. There's no sucking it back up and pulling it up. There's none of that. It's either you have caught it in the right time to do a C-section, or it gets stuck, and the doctor might try to maneuver it and push it, but at a certain level, there's just, so we don't want the baby to get stuck. And so that's one of the reasons why you have to do your checkup, so that your doctor can figure out, okay, is this going to be a cesarean section? Is this going to be a natural birth, so that these issues do not occur. So then here are all the information on the diameters. These you can kind of cover on your own. Again, they're not things that are on exams as much as I have seen, whether it's in class or on NCLEX, but you're definitely free to look at them, because I never want to say that it will never be there, right? But I always like to focus on the things that I've seen questions on the most. So now we're moving on to fertilization and implantation, which I've already mentioned already, right? Before I continue, I want to know if anyone has any questions that you want to ask, or anything you want to clarify. So again, we're talking about OB, we are covering anatomy, so we can understand the anatomy and physiology of the woman and the men, but mostly the women, so that we can understand more on maternity. Okay. So I'll move on. So with fertilization and implantation, right? We mentioned it, we said fertilization. Fertilization occurs in the ampulla of the fallopian tube, uterine tube, when sperm and ovum meets, right? So we know that there's a certain kind of, there's a timing for fertilization. So there's ovulation. So the idea is, some people are like, they calculate when they ovulate, so that they know around what time that they can get pregnant, right? So that's another reason why they have to know their what is it called, their cycle, right? 28 cycles, 28-day cycle. When are they ovulating? What part of what timing is it, right? So that they know when to have sexual intercourse, so that they can have more of a chance to having a baby. So when that happens, right, and the egg leaves the ovary and it gets into the fallopian tube, now that is the optimal time for you to have intercourse. And if you don't know that time and you have intercourse, then the sperm travels up there. The sperm is going to find a ready ova, and that's where the fertilization is going to happen. So each reproductive cell carries 23 chromosomes. So this is biology, molecular biology, that kind of thing, where we know there's mitosis and we know there's a meiosis. So mitosis is when you have a split of the cell and it becomes a mother cell produces two daughter cells that are identical to it, right? And then you have meiosis, where the mother cell has a certain amount, and then you have the father cell, which has a certain amount, and they come together, right? And then they form the baby. So they're not the baby is not exactly the same as the mother or or father, whatever, the sperm and egg together, right? So the egg has 23, the sperm has 23, and they make the baby, and the baby has certain characteristics of the mother and certain characteristics of the father. So that's where a cell carries 23 chromosomes, right? So each reproductive cell, each reproductive meaning the ovary, and the other one is the sperm. Then you have the sperm carries the X or Y chromosome. XY is male, XX is female, right? So that is something to know. You'll see this in genetics, and there have been genetics questions on examination, right? Which tells us, like, when we talk about certain diseases that are carried on the X chromosome, most diseases that are hereditary are usually carried on the X chromosome, like hemophilia, which we will cover later on. So it's important to know about chromosomes. Like a baby that has Down syndrome, it's usually a problem where they with their 23rd chromosome, where it's like half of it or something like that, right? And so it's important to know about chromosomes, and that there are certain diseases that are that are going to affect the child because of the chromosomes and how they're transcribed or replicated and all of that, right? So it's important to know that. Then we know the idea of the zygote is propelled towards the uterus and implants 6 to 8 days after ovulation, right? So it takes 6 to 8 days to travel down into the uterus, right? So this also tells us it takes that much amount of time. So if an egg happens to find the ovary during the time that it's traveling, it is still able to get fertilized, right? So it's not until the egg starts deteriorating that we no longer have access to developing a baby, right? So that's why, you really need, a woman really needs to know her ovulation time, because after that time, depending on the span of time, you still have, that egg is still viable, right? So imagine it taking it the 6 days and where it is and all of that, right? So that's important to know. And the idea of a zygote, right? This is a very controversial idea. Is this a baby? Is it a fetus? Like, is baby like alive, right? So the zygote is just when it starts to multiply, right? So this part here, so after it's been fertilized, right, in the fallopian tube, let me retract from what I said here with the 6 to 8 days. So once the egg has been fertilized, right, the egg starts to multiply with the sperm, right? The sperm penetrates, only one sperm does, right? Only one sperm penetrates and it gets to the egg, it starts to multiply. That is the zygote, and that is what is traveling down the fallopian tube and gets implanted into the uterus after 6 to 8 days. So let's make that clear. Okay, so now let's get to the fetal environment. Is there any questions pertaining to what I said just now or before? Okay, moving on, we have the fetal environment. So now this is once the fetus is growing and it's implanted and it's starting to find itself a home. Where is its home? So in the amnion, so this is forms a fluid-filled sac that surrounds the embryo and later the fetus, right? So this is a fluid that cushions, and we'll read about it a bit later. It cushions, it protects the embryo so that no shock or certain other, as they walk, or if anything happens, that it stays protected, right? Also, the fetus will urinate in it, and then they'll drink that fluid, which will then prove how their kidneys are doing, right? So that fluid does a lot for the fetus. Then we have the chorion, which becomes the vascular and vascularized and forms the fetal part of the placenta. So the placenta is one of the most important parts of the mom connected to the baby, right? Because this is how the baby gets its food, and this is how it gets rid of its toxins. And we'll talk about how that is constructed and the effects that has on the baby and mother, right? So now the amniotic fluid that we were talking about, it consists of 800 to 1200 mLs by the end of pregnancy. So if it's more, it's a problem. If it's less, it's definitely a problem. Okay, so this is the range of the fluid that should that the amniotic sac should contain. It surrounds, it cushions and protects the fetus and allows for fetal movement, right? So this is I've seen this question on exams, whether it's in class or NCLEX, so often that I definitely think you should commit this to memory. Okay, it maintains the body temperature of the fetus, definitely true. Contains fetal urine and the measurement of and is a measure of the fetal kidney function. I already mentioned that. The fetus modifies the amniotic fluid through the process of swallowing, urinating, and moving fluids through the respiratory tract. So it says respiratory tract here, but as you know, the baby, or you might not know, but fetuses cannot breathe, or they do not take air in as we do. So, but the blood is circulated into their respiratory tract. So just note that they're not breathing, even though it says respiratory tract here. And we will talk a bit about how the heart shunts blood from the heart, bypasses the lungs, so that it's not really used, right? Because it's not being used. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. Okay, next we're going to look at the placenta. So now the placenta provides for exchange of nutrients and waste and waste products between the fetus and the mother. So we already mentioned that, right? So this is how the baby eats, right? When the mother feeds herself and eats whatever, it goes into her bloodstream, right? And then the bloodstream is connected to the placenta, and the placenta is connected to the baby. And that's how the baby receives all of their nutrients. And that's one of the reasons why, right? We want mom to be healthy. We want her to take her vitamins. We want her to take folic acid, which is another thing that we're going to see later on that's important, so that the baby does not develop diseases like spina bifida, which is where there's a hole in the back because this spine or nervous system did not fully develop, right? So that's also exam questions. But all of this is important and is possible if mom is healthy, eating the right things, and baby can develop as they should, right? So exchange of nutrients and also waste products. So again, usually how we filter our blood is we have oxygenated, deoxygenated blood, right? Same thing with the baby. Oxygenated carries nutrients and iron and all of that. Deoxygenated is what is collected after all the blood is circulated, and it needs to be expelled. It goes to the kidney to be filtered. It goes to the lungs to collect oxygen, all of that, right? Baby has to go through the same thing, but we will see that the baby's is inverse, right? So whereas our arteries carry oxygenated blood, the baby's arteries carries deoxygenated blood, right? And that's important to know. Whereas our veins carry deoxygenated blood, the baby's veins carries oxygenated blood. So that is an exam question that you must remember. Okay, so again, remember that the placenta helps to exchange the nutrients and the wastes from the fetus to the mom so it can be expelled or ingested. The next thing to know about the placenta, in the third trimester, transfer of maternal immunoglobulin provides the fetus with passive immunity. So as you should know, right, baby's healthy, mommy's health is baby's health while the fetus is inside, right? And that's one of the reasons why we don't give mom certain medications, because there's a lot of things that crosses the placenta, meaning that are the veins that carry, it's only one vein, by the way, and you'll see that there's one vein and two arteries. The vein which carries oxygenated blood, right, will carry anything that the mother ingests to the baby. So the good things and also bad things. There have been moms who have cancer and who do not take their chemo, right? Because the chemo runs their system in their bloodstream, whether it's, chemo through IV or chemo through a pill, and moms will not take the chemo drug because they know it will affect the baby and it is caustic to the baby. Right? We also have moms who will not take their psych meds because they know it might affect the baby. So we have to be very careful that if mom is healthy, baby's going to be healthy. If mom is unhealthy or is doing things to be unhealthy, that's going to affect baby. That's why mom doesn't smoke, mom doesn't drink, mom doesn't do those things. But once baby exits mom's body, for the first 3 months or so, or few months, Mom is no longer there with placenta to give baby immunity, right? Mom takes all her shots or whatever she needs to do. Mom is healthy, baby's healthy, but now baby's out in the world by himself. Where is he or she getting the immunity from? Well, it's whatever blood that was remaining in the body that had their mom's immunity. Baby keeps it for a couple of months until that blood is replenished and refreshed, right? So as you should know, when we went through, or if you've already gone through med-surg, you know that the blood, every blood cell is alive in your body for 120 days and then it dies. So anything that blood is going to do for that 120 days, whatever it carries, whatever it's there for, it's going to do its function for 120 days. So in the baby, all the blood cells that were in the mom are transferred to the baby, stays in the baby for that amount of time. So whatever immunity that their white blood cells, because that's where immunity comes from, their white blood cells remains with them and they are immune because of whatever mom has. Also, when we talk about passive immunity, baby and mom produces milk, as we know, and the very first milk is called colostrum, right? That is important to immunity. That is also given to the baby as a source of passive immunity, right? And so we want to make sure that mom gives baby that first milk that she produces. That's another way. So that's something to remember. Again, it's called colostrum. A lot of moms see that it's like this really light milk color and they don't think it's strong enough for baby, but God made it that way. So it's very important to give that to the baby and not supplement anything. For more information on how to register for classes and get help from our tutoring center, visit www.gab-nicnursingtutor.com. That is www.gabnicnursingtutor.com. To view our free or paid classes, sign up on www.thinkific.com. That's www.thinkific.com and register for the pre-recorded classes of your choice after searching for the Gab-Nic Tutoring Center uploads. We offer in-person tutoring and Zoom calls. You can also find us on YouTube for more free classes and tips on how to do better in nursing. We are also on Facebook, where we upload articles, tips, and tricks on how you can make your journey to becoming a nurse smooth and near effortless. Did I mention Instagram? Basically, we are everywhere. So check us out or call 917-602-9927 and we will tell you just how to join. See you soon.